everyone, it's Jan, and the thing that I want to talk about today is how we can use color and design to really help keep the attention on our focal image, which is on this card. It's the little placard there in the center. I started making that particular placard when I was having that whole creative play day in my studio, and I made tons and tons of these focal images, and I thought I would focus on how I made this work. And for this one, I started off with a watercolor background, and I'm doing some shadow stamping. I'm using a very light ink with some script. And you see that it's not really a very pop. The watercolor background wasn't full of color and vibrant, so I needed to do something that would help it stand out from the rest of the card. And so what I decided to do was use high contrast colors. If I make a blue card, one of the highest contrast colors would be orange because it's opposite on the color wheel. And so I'm using this stamp of, I believe that's a mum, I want to say, or it's either a mum or a marigold. It's from the Year of Flowers with paper tray ink, and I stamped it in archival ink so that I can use some wet medium over it and it won't make it run. I'm using the mask, and I'm going to add just a couple of leaves in here to kind of balance out the rest of that image. And I had the mask for the other one and for the leaf, and needed to put that down too. So just a little quick masking and my stamping will be done. Pull those off, and I started out with yellow. I'm not really sure why I started with yellow, because so much of the area around that and the background was already yellow or yellowish green, but I did start with that, and it ended up being a good base color for what I finished doing. I think when I had it all colored in, I realized that, gosh, this isn't really popping either. Much of what I'm going to show you today really is the process of how my projects evolve. I sit down with a very basic idea. This particular watercolor background is one that I had done during a creative play session. I had nothing intended for it. It's just I ended up with this kind of cool background and decided that I wanted to do something with it. I keep them in a little box or a little tray on my desk. You never know when you might need a little tag, or you might need something. So when I have a creative play session, I use lots of die cut images and that sort of thing. So here's what I'm realizing. I'm not able to get a deep enough color orange on this. So I put a little bit more red down in there, and that is going to allow me to deepen up the orange that I'm putting onto this flower. And you can see it's getting to be a deeper color orange, and that really was the key to making this pop. Just playing and mixing as I go. And eventually I'll get to the color that I want, and then I wanted it to be watered down because that will flow nicely and give it a bit of transparency. So now I'm going back in and darkening it up, and I really ended up liking this much better. And you don't really see it until the final image how much darker it was. Watercolors dry lighter, acrylics dry a little darker. So when you're mixing your colors, know that they're depending on the type of medium you're using, it's going to change. Now, I apologize. Again, these were created when I was having a creative play session, and I turned the camera off when I got to this stage, but I had where I used the Prismacolor pencil, the white, to add highlights, and you can see on the final image over here how the edges of the flower, I'd put some white in there, then use some Gamsol to blend it out. I love using this technique when I'm working with Copic colored images or even painted images. You can add some additional depth to an image by taking your Prismacolors or colored pencils and coloring over it. Now, I'm showing you, clearly you've seen the card. This did not end up on there, but I wanted you to see that when I'm doing creative play, I let my ideas really kind of run wild. And I knew that orange was going to really make that pop. And so I cut some tissue paper and stamped it. And I was thinking I was going to do kind of this ruffly frame around it. It sounded good in my head, right? The orange is going to make it stand out, and the ruffle will give it some texture. You know, it seemed like a good idea. And you know what? I really want to encourage you, go down those paths. When you have an idea in your head and you go, gosh, that might be cool, don't just self-edit. Try it out. I mean, honestly, it didn't take me very long to do this, and I might actually use this technique on another kind of card. It just didn't seem to work for me here. So I've done a little frame around it. I'm going to put it on that green, and then I put it in there, and you know, yeah, you can see why I didn't end up using it. It was too fluffy or something, I don't know. Then I tried it with a smaller one. Wasn't going to happen. But I was wanting it to pop out. I really wanted this to work. Can you see? I came back to it again. Then I thought about it and went, you know what? What it really needs to do, that needs to be in the center of this background. And if it's just a side fold card, that's going to feel awkward as well. So here's where the design of the card actually makes it work. I decided to do a gatefold card. And to do that, you take your A2 size piece of paper, which is 8.5 by 5.5, and you score on either side at 2 1/8. When you fold it over, you're going to have your gatefold that meets in the middle. Wanted to do some stamping before I folded it. I wanted to put my sentiment inside because I decided that I wasn't going to put a sentiment on this outside piece. And I want a little tone on tone, so I'm just using a green ink that is going to be just a tad darker than the cardstock that I'm using. And I've put down a couple little sticky notes to mask off that one panel because I don't want it to go over onto that panel. This is a great way to tie the front of your card to the inside. And I'm using VersaFine ink for the sentiment because I love how deep and black the ink is. Doesn't work for me great with Copics. I know that some people will heat set it and use it, but I'm a little nervous Nelly with that. So I tend to just save it for stamping sentiments and that sort of thing. Or if I'm going to do some embossing. So with the gatefold card, I decided I would just split this background right down the middle. And again, this is one of those that came from a creative play time, gosh, weeks, months ago, but I keep the extras in my, in a little tray on my desk, so I have things to work with when I sit down to actually go ahead and create a card. If you want to know how I created this layered background, I have a video called Layered Background Technique, and I will give you a link down below so that you can see the step-by-step on that. I love these backgrounds. It gives you so much texture, but it isn't so overwhelming that it takes over the card. Just a very nice backdrop for focal images. So by splitting it down the middle, I decided that I could put the edges on the inside so that it actually, instead of the rectangle having that little 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch edge all the way around the center, I'm going to flip those outside edges to the center. You can see I had it that way, and then I went, oh yeah, if I turn it around, then I get that finished edge on that gatefold edge of the card. And I think that really made it pop. Because it is a layered background, has lots of paint, lots of, has a couple layers of cardstock on there, I'm going to use some really good adhesive, and this is that score tape, to hold it onto the card front. I just didn't want it to be warped or whatever. That'll keep it nice and flat. So just kind of this whole process, you realize as you're watching this, I did not know where I was going to end up when I started with this card, and that's one of those things that I try and do when I'm recording creative playtimes. I'm wanting you to see that it's a process. Sometimes I sit down with something definitive in mind, but a lot of the time I'm working with what I have, or what I'm trying to, what I need to use for an assignment or something like that. But most of the time I am figuring the process out as I go. I know I like this image. I know I like this background, but how do I make those two things work together? And on this particular card, putting that the kind of warm colors of that marigold on the front with the coolness of that kind of metallic looking aged metallic layered background, I think it gives enough contrast that there's a place for your eyes to light. And to make sure that I'm actually can open the card, be sure and only put your dimensional adhesive on one side. Then I'm centering that up, and there we have it. I know, I'm really pleased with how it turned out, and it was a total process. I love that the gatefold opens to reveal the sentiment, and I love how much that focal image really does pop off of the back of it. Have a beautiful background that's really enjoyable for your eye to look at, but it doesn't detract from the overall image. I hope this has been a helpful tutorial. I appreciate you stopping by and coming to hang out with me in my studio for a little bit. If you are not a subscriber, please subscribe to my channel. That will give you notice of when I have a new video up. And also follow me on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, because that's where I get to give you a sneak peek of what I'm working on right now. Hope you have a great week, and be sure and save some time for creative time. I'll see you soon.